All right. Good evening, leaders. Welcome to day 2 of the UC Virtual Leadership Masterclass Super Week. It is an honor to have you in the room again tonight. To everyone who returned after last night's powerful session, I'm very glad to see you. And to all first-time attendees, welcome to the Unfolding Capacity family. You are exactly where you need to be. Super Week is designed to stretch us. It is designed to sharpen us and to elevate our leadership posture as we prepare for 2026. And remember, at Unfolding Capacity, excellence is not a target, it is our culture. Everything we do flows from that conviction. Before we begin, please take a moment to complete the registration form if you haven't already, and follow Unfolding Capacity on WhatsApp for updates and future leadership content. As always, we encourage you to use your Zoom reactions and to participate actively through comments, insights, and questions. Tonight, we have the privilege of hosting an extraordinary leader in Boipelo Soko. Boipelo is the recruitment manager at Baker McKenzie South Africa, a globally integrated commercial law firm known for its commitment to excellence, integrity, and innovation. With more than a decade of experience in talent acquisition, people development, and strategic HR leadership, she has distinguished herself as a trusted voice in shaping professionals who are both skilled and principled. If I was looking for going upward and looking for a job, this will be perfect opportunity to learn. Her work is deeply rooted in developing leaders who can thrive in complex environments while remaining grounded in values that honor people, culture, and long-term sustainability. Tonight, she will be speaking to us on ethical leadership. Ethical leadership, a topic that could not be more timely. In a world where shortcuts seem attractive and pressure is high, Wipilo reminds us that true leadership is measured not only by results, but by character, by integrity, and the courage to do what is right, even when no one is watching. She's going to bring insight, clarity, and lived experience. And I know her voice will challenge and elevate each and every one of us in this room tonight. Fellow leaders and emerging leaders, please let us prepare our hearts and minds for a session of depth, honesty, authenticity, and transformation. Please join me in welcoming our guest tonight, Boipelo Soko. Boipelo, I'm going to hand over to you with a wonderful round of applause and say, take it on.
Before we begin, like, share, and subscribe.
Thank you so much, Amazement, and to everyone that's on the call this evening. Really looking forward to engaging session. I don't want this to be a lecture. I think we're all leaders in the room, and I'd love to see your comments, your examples also popping through on the chat. Let's make this as engaging as possible. It really is an honor for me to be in this room, specifically in the Super Week with all of you. And I also hope to learn and have some takeaways myself, coming out of today's session and even into the rest of the week. So I'm going to share my screen. I can see the chat clearly. So if there's any comments or questions, I'm able to engage as I see them. So please don't be shy. Let's make this a wonderful evening of engagement. Okay, just confirming that you can see my screen. If I can just get some thumbs up. Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so in today's session, I really wanted us to reflect on ethical leadership and, what are the decisions that you as leaders make that shape daily actions. Thinking about leadership and more than just, as a tick box exercise from an ethics point of view, but about what it is that we do on the day-to-day basis and how do the different areas of our lives impact the kind of leaders that we show up as. So let's kickstart. Of course, Murphy's Law will have, there we go, a little bit of delay there. But I'd like to kickstart just by asking you, and I'd like to see some comments on the chats there. What does ethical leadership mean to you, and how do you embody it? So I'm going to pause there because I really do want to see some comments. It doesn't need to be long. I'm mindful that some people are driving and others have noted that they aren't able to engage. But for everybody else, if you can just share, what does ethical leadership mean to you, and how do you think you embody it? It can be in a one word or in a quick sentence. I'm going to pause and just like to see some comments up on the chat, please. Okay, true to self and others, integrity, like that is a word. I'm gonna challenge you leaders today, to engage with me here. How do you think you embody ethical leadership in your day-to-day actions? What do you think that looks like? What are your behaviors that reflect that? Ah, oh, Dr. Rabani, that's a beautiful one. Accept weakness, right? Transparency. Maybe I'll take one more comment before I move on from the slide. Doing no harm. Upholding norms and values. Yes, Vivo, thank you for that. Okay, so let's think about how do we conventionally define ethical leadership. No, it is a core set of principles of, grounded in integrity, fairness, and accountability, which are words that I love to see have popped up already on the chat. It's really about your guiding day-to-day actions. And, without going into every bullet point on the slide, I want you to think about ethical leadership in the day-to-day. So let's start with, how does it reflected in your homes? Right. So if you have young kids, especially if you're raising a family, um, what are the rules and the standards that you set for them, right? What is it that you say, this is okay, this is an absolute no, and these are the things that I'm happy for you to get away with. How do we then take that into our education sector as an example? So are we comfortable with the schools in which we place our then young people, for them to learn what normative behaviors look like? So using Vivo's comment there, upholding norms and values. What are those norms and values, and how are they then instilled within the education sector, which is really just, basically the building blocks of what if ethical behavior looks like. And if you then kind of graduated over into university or then starting to work, again, what do those day-to-day behaviors look like? And if you then move over into the working environment, so the organizations in which all of us here represent, whether as volunteers, whether as seniors, as managers, as team leaders, or even just as just a junior in a team. What are the actions that you embody, that you have taken over from home, from your communities, that that you live with, and that you reflect? So thinking really deeply about, if I am a leader in whatever capacity, a formal capacity, um, in my community, like I said, or in my organization, What are those norms and standards? What are those values? What are the things that are regarded as fairness or accountability that I embody and that I, lead by, and then expect others to also follow suit on? So really thinking about ethical leadership as more than just a compliance, like I said earlier, a tick box exercise, just principles that guide individuals and organizations, I said, with fairness and integrity. Thinking about ethical leadership obviously as having an impact on organizational culture, having an impact on society, because those are the things with which we foster trust and respect. But in a space and time where uh, in certain areas people are happy to turn a blind eye, how do we then show up as the bold leader? How do you then show up as a leader that is unafraid? um, Unafraid to to be the different voice, unafraid to say, actually, this is not what I stand for, and even if it means that I may then suffer for making that decision or for being that voice. What does that then look like, and how does it, of course, impact on our culture? How does it impact on your organizational culture and your society? And then just thinking about what are the things that you then do as a leader to then build credibility and align values. So in instances where you recognize that there are gaps, or opportunities rather, to strengthen, opportunities to build. Do you take advantage of them? Again, leaders, I want you to look at these bullet points and think about them as questions for yourselves, questions for the organizations that you represent, the spaces in which you influence. How do you embody these different bullet points? Are your core principles quite strong and such that anyone in any room speaking about you could consistently say, yes, this person is that. They are fair. They're a person of integrity. They're a person, just to use Dr. Rabane's words, a person that, demonstrates their vulnerability and makes space for that and accepts it as is. Are those part of your core principles? Do you then impact a culture in a way that impact and influence culture of the spaces that you occupy in a way that then fosters trust and respect, beyond beyond just your teams, into like a larger organization, right, or society, as it will. And do you do it in such a way that there is a long-term success, so that even if you then leave the spaces that you currently occupy, the behaviors are so then embedded that people are able to continue in those ways because of the impact that you have made. And of course, then the question around, those behaviors, those actions, that way of being relevant, within the spaces that you occupy. So what I mean by that is, yes, at the core of it, ethics are your style, insofar as your ethical leadership is concerned, may be grounded in the values of integrity, fairness, and accountability. But what does that look like in an education sector versus in entrepreneurship? So when I spoke earlier, I made the example of, if you think about it, a child in your home versus a child at a school. The community of a school isn't always as straightforward as one would like to think it is, right? So you have the teachers as leaders. You have potentially, depending on the levels of the students, you also then have the student organization body as well. You then have the parents, and other members of community coming in as part of the school governing authority. Then you also then have the, government as we have it, of course, the politics within government also impacting what this education and school environment looks like. How you show up in that space is vastly different to how one would show up as an ethical leader within an entrepreneurship space, because, that's a very private organization. Yes, it's governed by certain rules, but it is also not as invasive as one would have within the education sector. So even understanding how you show up as an ethical leader within different spaces is quite important, because that is where you then are able to build sustainable success and have a positive impact that that is both credible, but is also, like I said earlier, sustainable beyond you, right? Again, leaders, please do also pop in with your comments and chats there. But the point here is that the approach within different spaces is critical because of the diversity of, the sectors in which we occupy and the spaces that we occupy. So decisions impacting communities beyond the workplace, right? So from personal also into volunteer and also into home. So why does ethical leadership matter? Like I've touched on, the impact really is on trust. It's on building trust. It's on building communities that you trust, and building so with the values that are aligned to what it is that we are ultimately trying to create and achieve, right? So it really is essential to build credibility, obviously, amongst the relevant stakeholders, and trust being the cornerstone of effective collaboration and productivity, and recognizing that when it is broken, it does lead to disengagement and organizational failure. And to deny that really is to work backwards. Where there is no trust, where there's assumptions of or perceptions even of bias, favoritism, and the like, or lack of clarity, um, lack of clarity on the direction in which one is going, one organization is going, a lack of trust even in a leader's values, in the sense that today a leader says this is what we stand for, but tomorrow says this is, but then tomorrow their opinion is changed based on a new set of not facts, but again, perceptions and wanting to please everyone. That also erodes trust. So are you the leader that says, I have an open door policy, everyone can engage with me, you can trust me to listen, you can trust me to do something about what you have brought to me, uh, but then on the whole can't be trusted to then make a decision and stick to it? Because today, Dr. Rabapanis came to me and said, I'm really unhappy with how, this decision or this new rule that has been decided is going to impact me. And then the leader saying, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll review that. And then tomorrow speaking to somebody else and saying, no, but actually, you know what, you've brought an alternative view, and therefore we are going to change our views on that. That is a leader that you cannot trust, because they're not consistent. Thank you for that amazement. You have a leader that is inconsistent insofar as applying their rules, and insofar as applying the values of what it is that they stand for. So leaders who are you leaders that are able to align your own values with those of the organizations and spaces that you occupy, specifically to create stability and specifically to reduce ambiguity in decisions, to reduce distrust with the people the people that are your relevant stakeholders. And then again, like I said, just making sure that the decisions that you're making influence beyond the workplace into then your societal norms and contributing to community well-being. So again, do the people that you influence and that you affect, that you impact, walk away from engagements with you and say, actually, I want to embody that and I will embody that in my space because the person that I look up to or the person that I refer to as my leader, formally or informally, embodies this. And so I'm inspired by that. And therefore, I now aspire to, to being like them. Are you the leader that prioritizes fairness and accountability and similar behaviors in teams? Do you create a culture of integrity that resonates be beyond beyond your space of influence? And again, leaders, I'll keep reminding my discussion with you today is really just a challenge to reflect on this year and the kind of decisions that you have made, the spaces that you've occupied and the teams that you work with, to think about, next week we go into December. What in this last month do you still have time to change or do differently, or to even amplify? Because maybe you are getting it right. And if you're really proud of the actions and the way that you carry yourself, please share that as well. Let us learn from you on how it is that you have shaped the spaces that you occupy. And then, of course, a reflection into how do you want to show up or continue to show up as a leader going into the new year. Okay, so let's think a little bit around key decision areas for you as leaders, right? So at the core of it, or in maybe rather simple ways, we'll think about, ethical workplace decisions. So you face critical decisions in both your professional and personal spaces. Again, maybe just going back to some of the examples that I touched on earlier within the workplace, and I guess I'm an HR person, so I'll use a simple HR example for me. But what are the ethical considerations that you take if you are team leaders, for example, and you're recruiting people into your spaces, your organizations? Do you employ fair hiring and promotion criterias? Are they consistent? Are they clear? Do people know and understand how they can progress in spaces that in which that they work with you? Um, or is there an assumption of favoritism, or just a shroud of secrecy around how people actually get hired? Who brought you in? And I always say, there really is on its own nothing wrong actually with knowing somebody and referring them into an organization. Um, Quite often, you will find that in most organizations, you would encourage people to refer people because what you hope for is that you have a strong enough positive culture that when people are referring someone, they understand that the person that they are referring into the organization is also going to be of of value. They're going to add value into the organization, both culturally and also into the culture of the organization, but also into product from a productivity point of view. But where there is inconsistent or unfair practices, then the culture of a referral is questionable, because then you really don't know who are the people that you're bringing in. Why are you bringing in those people? What is it that they are going to be, what value are they going to be bringing into the organization, from a cultural point of view, like I said, but also from a productivity point of view. And are you then, as an organization or even as a leader, willing to make the hard decision of saying, I have made a mistake. We've brought in the wrong person. And for these specific reasons, this is why they are the wrong person. And unfortunately, we now have to let that person go and be fair to that person also in saying, this is why we're letting you go. As opposed to just saying, as opposed to creating an unfair narrative on an employee just because of just because of an inconsistency or misalignment with the values of your organization. So really just asking yourself from a workplace perspective, how are you then showing up as a leader? Are you truly ethical in how you engage with the people around you, how you speak about the people around you, the kind of comments, especially flyaway comments that we make about about the people that we engage with on a day-to-day basis? Do we undermine do we undermine other seniors, other leaders? Do we undermine even juniors? Because of because of how we then show up, and then obviously by extension causing the rest of the team to also embody those behaviors, right? Are you then clear and prompt in managing conflict? And this you could even think about even in your personal capacity. How do you respond to conflict? Do you understand your own do you understand yourself enough to, or rather, do you have enough self-awareness insofar as what your conflict resolution style is like? Are you avoidant? Are you aggressive? How do you help people then approach conflict within an organization? I mean, just like I said earlier, are you then undermining through comments, even if you are then following due process? Because of course that then impacts your culture as a whole. So really thinking about, what are some of the things that you could have done differently or better? Because ultimately the aim in being an ethical leader and showing up as an ethical leader is that you want to foster trust and you do want to foster a positive working environment. Work takes up so much of our time that we want it to be a space that people are generally, not always, but generally happy and content to be in, and at least at peace to be within the organizations working with you, right? And then modeling things around modeling things around work-life balance, and what that means to you as a person, because it's not always a 50-50 split. In fact, I'd even call it a work-life integration. Like Dr. Rabbani said, they, speaking ill of leaders creating negativity in a group. Are you that person? Are you transparent in explaining decisions that are made and why they were made? Do you engage in things around corporate social responsibility, and why? Is it just for points, or is it because there is a true desire to make an impact beyond your space, and to give people an opportunity and a voice for themselves as well. So I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to play us a quick video. I hope it plays. I hope it will link correctly to the page. Okay, if we can just pause, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and quickly share separate screens. Just give me a quick second. I'm sure most of you are familiar actually with this example that I'm going to put up. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this video. And for those of you that are not, enjoy. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with that video. So I'll explain why I put up this video, Dr. Papani. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with that video, that video is two people at a concert. It was a Coldplay concert, and the camera that just catching the audience went out, and yeah, it went out and happened to pause on that couple. And as you saw from their reaction, they reacted very quickly to not be seen. And Chris, who is the lead singer of Coldplay, made the unfortunate comment in saying, "Oh, look at these two. Well, based on the reaction, surely they must be having an affair." It was a joke, and everybody laughed. Unfortunately, it turned out that it was two people at a concert having an affair, and that was the reason why they had jumped down. Dr. Rabane, why this was such a big deal, why it trended everywhere, was because in that video, the man is a CEO of a company, quite a big company, and the lady in his arms is the HR representative from same company, and both of them are married. And it raised a lot of questions about what kind of leaders are they? At first, it was just the man that received a lot of flack, as you will, because obviously he is the CEO. And his family and his wife were questioned quite a bit. But later, the question also became, but actually, even the HR person, so the woman he was having the affair with, should also be held to the same standard. So not just the CEO, right? And really, the question here, if we come back to our chat, it's an understanding that our actions, both in our personal space and in our professional space, and the decisions that we make sometimes cannot be mutually exclusive, right? So although they were at a concert, and one could easily have said this was a private event and this is a private affair, the reality of it is within the workspace, they were showing up in a certain way. People then came out later with comments and lots of comments actually around how they were showing up as leaders, as seniors within the workplace. But one would question how, on a day-to-day basis, what the employees thought of him and thought of her, right? So how her decisions and how his decisions were undermined by the knowledge of the affair, which even if they then thought that people didn't know, highly unlikely, in fact, proven that it was that people knew about it, right? And then I want to post up this example. This is a Facebook post. In fact, a very recent Facebook post. I think this was from 2, 3 days ago. And the person who posted this, just a normal person on Facebook, not a journalist, not a this was not a news publication. This is just a normal layperson put up this post. This is a comment, and this is clearly obviously somebody with an open profile. Then this could have been Twitter or X as it's called. It could have been Instagram. It could have been WhatsApp status. My point is this is a social media post that's gone up, and it brings up a lot of serious issues, right? So who is the person that's posting it? Does it matter or doesn't it? Are there specific voices that are supposed to be providing certain types of information out into public? The question at the issue here is about a grade 12 learner who was found cheating with a phone during exams, the latest round of matriculant exams. Um, and there's a couple of things here that I would like for us to maybe just stop and think about. So, like I said, this is the person who posted this is not a journalist. And to me, this is such a serious post to put out um, without a reference point. This may as well be gossip, right? Uh, Put up on a public platform and questioning, really asking an ethical question, and asking an ethical question here. Who is to blame? That's actually for me the core of the question. It's not so much the question that they have posted, which was, is the kid the only one to ever been caught cheating? Because of course not. Um, but but if we go back to my earlier comments around ethics and maybe even what can be called an ethics expectations gap. Where is it that one is supposed to develop or strengthen their ethics within the different spaces of society, right? So can one blame the parents? Do you question the parents for allowing a child to go to school with a phone during exams, or for how they've raised them? Because there's always a question. There's always a question around like, what did the parents say? Did the parents know? That blame game, right? Um, and then there's also the question around the school system. So how the school system responded. And again, I remind you of how I started with how do we develop our ethical standards? How do we decide this is what I stand for? So is it then the school that is then responsible for entrenching what a student's values must look like? And what is it that they must decide insofar as the integrity is concerned? So you don't take a phone to the exams, or ideally you shouldn't be cheating. But at the point when the student is caught, what are the systems in place to manage that? So who has verbally attacked the student? This post is so vague. The child went into the school office and was verbally attacked, but by whom? Was it by the teacher, by the principal? Then how do we know this? And how do you suddenly link that to the child committing suicide, right? So again, questioning where and yes, amazement. We call it the ethics expectation gap. Where where was one's ethics supposed to have been entrenched, formed and then entrenched, and who was supposed to be almost like the holder of that space, so that the leaders that were developing from childhood all the way into our organizations are able to model behaviors that encourage people to make better decisions, right? Because you could equally say, and let us assume here that the office the student was taken into was that of the principal, and therefore assume that it's the principal that verbally attacked the student using the words on the post. So if as a principal, that is how you showed up to catching a student that was cheating, how else do you show up when students are caught doing unethical things or doing things that are out of line? How do you respond to teachers that are also caught doing things that are out of line? Be they mistakes that they own, or mistakes that they don't, and how they respond to that. How do you then, as principal and by extension employee yourself, but also leader, in an organization show up. And then, of course, you then bring in the parents, etc. And if you were to extend this, having assumed that the student hadn't committed suicide, but had, if the other students who had cheated but had passed, and were never caught, do they eventually become the juniors in our teams, in our working organizations that want to take shortcuts, that then assume that actually I can succeed by doing by getting away with unethical behaviors? And is our society as it sits now one that also encourages that? I would challenge you to think about where we are positioned right now as a country, and specifically in South Africa. Um, we have a lot of commissions happening. We just came out of a really beautiful G20, but obviously also coming with its own issues, around the politics with SA and the US. How did our leaders show up within, those different spaces, G20 versus the commissions as you were? How are those different areas being reported? And how are our young leaders and our prospective leaders observing how at least those in public spaces are being regarded, and how they are being how they're being regarded, and what is it that we as a society almost say this, we are okay with this versus we are not okay with certain actions. And then again, taking that into our day-to-day actions. What does that then look like in our day-to-day actions? Yes, Florence, I love that comment. School management certainly could have dealt with it better without it needing to escalate. And because people make mistakes, and people make flawed decisions all the time, because we are human. And certainly ethical and strong leaders recognize that you don't really get much out of condemning people. Um, but you can make hard decisions without condemning people for making mistakes. But do we leave space for that? And then I think that's the point also that was made earlier when I had asked about how do we show up in our values, when somebody said, making space for weakness. So allowing that vulnerability to say a mistake has been made, and so let's work together to move on from it. How do we show up in those, right? And again, Florence, maybe just coming back to my earlier point, you see a post like that in a public forum, but you question the references of it. Like, is that even a true story? And like, where does it come from? Like, who, do we have space to engage with it? Or do we just assume that it is true because somebody has put it up on a public platform? And so almost I am coming towards a close because I'm mindful of your time. Really just thinking about leaders uh, do profoundly influence the daily actions of the teams and the people that they work with and that they engage with. And they do so through role modeling and communication, clear communication, consistent communication, using respectful and really fair language, listening to understand as opposed to respond, and just engaging, always engaging quite openly and fairly. It- and of course, then making decisions that are, grounded in clear principles, decisions that are not ambiguous, and that discourage unethical shortcuts. Sometimes a shortcut might be easy, but the price you pay for it is long and can be quite hard, especially then to undo. So really just thinking about you needing or wanting to be the kind of leader that is accountable, that demonstrates that that is transparent, that is fair, and really reinforces ethical standards from ethical standards throughout your organization. So maybe almost kind of closing. What are some actionable strategies that for ethical leadership? Really just thinking about self-reflection, and I said this was the point of today's session. Really just taking the time to reflect on the decisions that you make, and thinking about whether they are aligned with the standards, the ethical standards that you have set, that you speak on, that you have on paper, and that these are the decisions that you make both privately and publicly. Continuing your own education around ethical leadership and ethical learning. So yes, earlier I touched on the fact that it's not just a compliance tick box exercise, but to the extent that there's a compliance element to it, learning more, keeping up with regulation if that's the case, understanding what's happening in different sectors, especially sectors that influence or cross influence into your spaces. And maybe even locally, maybe not even thinking around sectors, but thinking around dialogues with other teams, dialogues with people in different spaces, and just making sure that you're not siloed in your approach, not siloed in your understanding of context, and how it influences or permeates across different spaces. Being accountable in your different structures, like I said, so just promoting transparency and a shared responsibility amongst leaders. So where you might not necessarily speak ill of others, do you make space for those that do? Do you encourage it by not calling them out? Like I said earlier, just being that bold voice sometimes to say, hey, like it sounds like you're venting, but quite often I think you're actually just gossiping in how you reference other people. So please just be mindful of that. Be mindful of who you're talking about and who it is that is listening around you. So just being the leader that is not afraid to go against the mold at times, and just building those habits in small actions. So simple things is starting meetings, sometimes even with a values check-in. So as opposed to starting a meeting with, can everyone just give us an update on what it is that they're doing, but actually just checking in on where are people at really, and where are they at insofar as the organization is concerned, and maybe even personally, to the extent that people are willing to share. And then, like I said, just thinking around the different spaces in which you occupy and how you show up in those spaces. So, ethical leadership does manifest itself differently across sectors. The core values may, of course, be consistent, but and have common principles, but really just ensuring that you're fostering integrity and those values in a way that is applicable. It is in a way that is relevant, and it is in a way that will be sustainable within the spaces that you occupy, and in the spaces in which you are also guiding others to show up as ethical leaders. And then I'll close off with this quote from Norman Schwarzkopf. He was a United States Army general, who obviously served in quite a few of the Gulf Wars. But I like this quote that he said, leadership is a combination of strategy and character. And if you must be without one, rather be without strategy. Whereas character really isn't something that one should be compromising. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your evening. I thank you for your time. I will stop sharing my screen now and hand back over to amazement.
Wow. Yeah. My goodness. Yeah. You know, the issue is that there are a lot of things that I want to say, but the issue is that the way you ended it also brought a lot of it triggered a lot of thoughts, that rather have character about strategy. Wow. You know, there's a saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I,
Yes,
I think lack of character just kills strategy altogether. I think it just
100%.
it just kills strategy altogether. From everything that you were saying and that you share on ethics, I must say that it's coming at a time that is very relevant, right? Because of what we are facing and what we've been facing as a country. Secondly, the underlying theme from everything you shared is intention, 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 intention. That as leaders, we cannot leave ethics and ethical decision making to chance. We cannot leave it to assumptions that, look, people are going to be ethical, things are going to be done right. The simple snapshot that you shared of somebody's post on Facebook just highlighted that, because I could feel the silence in the room, that people are thinking deeply. How do I take it? Who is right? And because it stayed there for quite a time, everyone was looking at it, was possibly thinking, wait, no, the teacher is wrong. No, the child is wrong. No, this and this is wrong. But the more you looked at it, the more it made one think deeply. Really, really, where are the systems? Where are the gaps? What can we improve? What can we work on? Where are the failures? And at the end of the day, things like that happen over time simply because we are leaving ethics to chance. We are leaving
Correct.
decision making to chance. And gosh, you've just nailed it, and you've opened up a lot of thinking on our side. Maybe before I take everyone's time, people have questions and comments. If you have a question and a comment in this room, please feel free to let me know. Just show by raising of a hand or type it onto the chat room, and we will acknowledge you and we'll give you an opportunity to ask that question. Thank you. I see Mujalifa is here as well. Last night's speaker, I see Zianda is here as well, which is awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. But if you have a question or a comment, please feel free to put it in the text and in the chat, or just show by lifting of your hand and we'll give you the opportunity. While you're preparing to do that, I want to ask, right? As we are speaking, I asked myself this question. Is there something as National Ethical or Ethics Index, like such that we can look into different countries and say, where do we stand in terms of ethics as a
Mm.
country? What is the typical uh, I don't know how to put this question. Like, what is the typical response of a leader in our country? Do we sway towards ethical decision making, or do we sway towards the opposite? So it's just that is my first question. Is there such thing as a national ethics index? And if there isn't, from your point of view, and you working in legal as well, you're in HR, you're working with people on an everyday basis and leaders, what do you think, or where do you think we stand as a country? and and both public and private. Where do you think we stand as a country in terms of ethical decision making? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I think
Oh, that is a horrible question. That second one is a horrible one.
yeah.
Um, and I'm not going to answer it fully because I actually watched the podcast 2 days ago, and the speaker on it was actually asked something about whenever you, or the guest rather, whenever you're asked about South Africa, and the question being, what do you think is happening in South Africa right now? Or yes, it was something along those lines. His response was, Well, you need to first ask me South Africa in comparison to who? Because if you say South Africa in comparison to Argentina, if we say in comparison to North Korea, if you compare it to Ghana, like the barometer is not the same, right? Um, and so it really can be quite an unfair question to almost make it seem as if there is a standard that all countries are abiding to. And unfortunately, there isn't, right? And I think that kind of leads into your first question. Yes, so those kind of stats you can find. I mean, we even have like an ethics institute of South Africa. You can find information on different barometers. How do you kind of measure us? But on a whole, I think it is difficult to kind of situate us. Yeah, because South Africa is like an interesting country. And the example I said, we are literally in this last week, you're either talking about the commissions or you're talking about G20. And if you're talking about G20, South Africa's done an incredible job and amazing. And, we weren't going to be bullied into making decisions. We stood for the right decisions and our values were clear. But if you're listening to the commissions and what is being um, suggested and revealed in certain instances about some of our leaders would make you then question what exactly do we stand for as a country. So it's a layered question there, Amazement. I think it's too layered for us to unpack at 10 past 8.
Yeah, I feel. I think you've just said it right. Compared to what, and just that phrase alone, make us really think on, or rather, bring ourselves to our awareness of what's happening across the world, where ethics is
Mhm.
being bent everywhere.
Yeah.
I worked a number of years in government, and I used to think, look, government is so bad. If I go to private, it's going to be better. And and I went to private, and I know when I go to private, I'm like, okay, well, what's happening in this country? What's happening?
Yes,
I
yes, yes,
feel
that's
like
like a joke.
there's a huge microphone, a loudspeaker that has been put on the government and its failures, but sometimes little is being put on private and its nonsensical behavior when it comes to ethics
Mhm.
bending. And
Mm.
it's scary. It's scary. And that's what brought me to asking a question of, is there such thing as a national index of ethics? Because I think we should worry about it as leaders. We should be concerned about
Mm.
where we stand as a country. We should be concerned about what is the default behavior of a leader in South
Mm.
Africa. Is a default behavior more ethical, or it's more likely to be unethical? But I'm
Mm.
leave it there. I mean, there's a question here. Yeah, there's a comment as well on the chat, a very wonderful one. But let me allow a question to come. Yes, this is Dr. Reboni.
Okay, hi. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I just wanted to say I really liked how you linked ethics to trust and building trust. Because at the end of the day, we need to know why are we so interested in ethics. And if the
Mm.
end goal is to build trust, then I think it's a worthy cause. I once read a book by Numa Lobiko, and he was talking about how trust makes transactions cheaper. In an environment where there's a lot of trust, you can do more for less. So
Yes,
you can
love that.
transform with relative ease, you can transact and expand with relative ease if there's trust. But if there's no trust, it takes so much effort to do very little. So if
Yeah.
yeah, so if we try and work hard on ourselves as leaders and our teams in building that ethical muscle, the benefit that we get out of that is that we build trust and our ideas will come to fruition with greater ease and less friction and all of that. So thank you very much for that link. I think it was very important.
And thank you so much for that comment. Can you imagine if our leaders in both public and private spaces were able to link that, to understand that this is all you're doing, right? If one was to say you are in public service, your job is to ensure that people can trust that the taxes we pay, the services, are going to be reflected in the services that we receive from state. I don't think people would have as much of an issue with the kind of services that government makes available to us because, and this is now coming back to you, Amazement. If you were to compare the services that our government makes available to our people to a lot of other countries, they really are quite amazing. It's unheard of in many countries, the kind of services that our government makes available to our people. But if we trusted that the monies that we as the people are paying is actually going towards those services, towards building roads, towards capacitating schools correctly, towards ensuring that we are moving forward as a country, then we wouldn't be as stressed about, how much is the grant for pensioners and for children, because there are other societal issues that have impacted that. But yeah, where there's lack of trust, you're constantly then questioning. And of course, similar in the private sector as well. And I think the example around even recruitment, that example, and I've been in both spaces, both in public and and now private. And I moved into private because I was tired of comments about, if in the private sector, it's so amazing. And I was like, I actually want to see what's happening in private and bring it back to public. I've yet to go back, but that was my original thinking. But you move into the spaces and you're like, actually, the same issues that were happening, especially in the HR space, the same issues that were in the public sector, I see them also in the private sector. So who exactly is leading whom here, So yeah, thank you, Dr. Rabani, for that comment. That I actually even wrote some of it down for my own notes. So thank you.
That's good. Let me just read a few comments. If you have a question, please, again, feel free to let us know. Quickly, by Mr. Charles Ngobeni, he says that it is commonly said that there is no school or college for becoming a leader or manager. Today, I beg to differ. This platform is the relevant institution of all leaders to become leaders of integrity, value, and relevance. Keep on rolling these workshops for us. Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. That's very encouraging. Thank you so much. Dr. Bapani said, I think the default character for most leaders is playing it home. And we come from a background that is self-preferring against ethical choices and meritocracy. What do you think of that?
That, I think that for me is goes back to the original position I started with. If you think, I mean, the example of a child, right? What is it that you say yes and no to in your child's behaviors? I sat in a presentation a while ago where the presenter actually started with a similar example of, in her home, the kids all know that you don't sleep unless the dishes are washed. It is a rule. It is a simple rule, but every now and then, I guess in their home they have a dishwasher, and every now and then the kids will set the dishwasher on a faster setting because they're trying to take a shortcut, right? And so she has then had to impose those rules, right? Because she knows once they go into school, if they were already used to at home getting away with small things, that's what those are the small building blocks that they start to then take into their different spaces that they then occupy. And it eventually manifests in the kind of adults and leaders, employees, if you will, colleagues, that we engage with on a day-to-day basis. So the default really is what is happening in our homes. What is it that we allow to happen in our homes? What is it against? I mean, if we were to go back to the comment that was made earlier about speaking ill of people, you may not think much of it maybe in your workspace, but the comments that you go back home to about the people that you work with, those that are around you, what is it that they are absorbing and observing about how workplace dynamics are like, about what you are like in how you show up in those other spaces, right? Um, if I'm speaking ill of a colleague at home on a consistent basis, it says a lot about me and what it is that I'm teaching the people around me about my my views and my perceptions beyond home. So I 100% agree with her. It starts in the default, it starts within our home spaces and our personal spaces, and it amplifies within our professional spaces.
Yeah, most definitely. Uh, I have this thing that I used to say that life is a question of identity. You do who you are. So
Mm,
who you are will always influence your actions. If just a simple, it's and how we act, it's always going to be a reflection of who we really think we are, and that goes back to how we do things in our most secure places, our home. But I've got
yeah.
three questions for you, right? Before I let you go, I know I've taken over your time, and your little one is waiting for you. But yes,
Yes.
yeah, three questions. The first one is on meritocracy, right? There's policy balance. And a few years ago, I attended a workshop on when I was in government on affirmative action, and so I thought I should ask this question that in a country like South Africa, where employment equity and affirmative action are legal imperatives, how can HR leaders design processes that truly honor merit, capability, and excellence while still ensuring fairness and representation and compliance? What does a balanced ethical approach look like in practice? And I'm asking this because you are an HR expert, so
Yeah.
at least think on that. The second one is on ethical concerns, right? And I wanted to pose it for public service, but it's actually affecting both sectors, right? So we have seen recurring reports of questionable appointments and unethical placements within, especially in the public sector, right? Recently, we had a number of people being asked in the parliament a simple question: "What do you do?" And the people will mumble and
They
mumble.
giggled.
Yeah,
They giggled. They giggled, amazing. They giggled.
they have nothing
I
to
was so
say.
annoyed. Yeah.
Exactly. And I look at that, I'm like, what do we do from your perspective as a talent and leadership practitioner? What systemic
Mm.
gaps or leadership failures allow this to happen? And what would an ethically sound HR system actually look like? What systems will be put in place to ensure things like that doesn't happen? Because I must say, it is embarrassing. Um,
Yeah.
and the last question, from me, I'm going to keep it at three. It says, so for emerging leaders, because we have a lot of leaders, and in fact, when I say emerging leaders, I'm cutting people off. For leaders who want to grow in seniority, all right? We're in this place, there's a teacher, they want to become an HOD or a deputy principal or a principal,
Yeah.
or they're, junior doctor, they want to become clinical manager, or a CEO, working in a different company. In a company, you are low in management, you want to climb up the ladder. Uh, but you're finding yourself in this environment where you're working, where unethical behavior seems normalized and even rewarded. If you're a female, you're finding that the people who seem to date or have this uh, ambiguous relationship with the people in senior positions seems to be the one that go up, and you who keep to your ethical conduct are left behind.
Yeah.
If you're a other person who just want to go up, you find that those who lie, those who cheat, those who do things, how can I say, under the mat,
Sleep the way to the
yes,
top.
these people are the ones who get rewarded, and it's normalized in the world we're living in and in the country we're living in. What advice would you give to a kind of person who wants to do things right? What advice would you give them about rising through the ranks without compromising their values, identity, or long-term credibility? Because we have seen just a few weeks ago, we had from the Madlanga Commission of one person who was capable, who was fired, punished for being ethical. So,
Yeah.
what advice would you give? And I just gave those three questions because, gosh, yeah, time is not on our side. So please shoot.
Yeah. Oh man, such important questions. Thank you for those. And I think also the kinds of questions that all organizations, whatever type of organization, be it a volunteer organization, a community, um, public, private, should be asking themselves on a regular basis. And in particular, people that then sit as execs or seniors, and of course, the people that, manage the HR portfolio, should go without saying for them. So let me start on your first question. The first question, amazing. I think I got a part of it, but basically you're asking what's a balanced ethical approach to meritocracy, right? Look, I think your first two questions for me are linked, because it's really about systems. It's about systems that you put in place. But more than systems, okay, so let me backtrack this. The systems, there will always be best behaviors, or best practice. There's, constant research on what is it that you can do within your specific sector, that is considered best practice. How do you recruit people? How do you retain people? How do you train and develop people? What opportunities do you make available, for people to thrive within an organization, irrespective of the type of organization it is? All you're doing is then contextualizing for, the sector, the space that you're in. But the part around what kind of systems do you put in place, it's if we kind of go back to my slides, it's you are clear, you are transparent in what are the rules, what are the expectations. So if you look at your recruitment process, maybe as the first part, just making it clear, this is what our recruitment process looks like. If there's a role, how does a role in fact become available as a part one? And how does it then get filled? Can you refer people or not? Do you get rewarded for referring people or not? Because again, there's nothing wrong with that, inherently wrong with that. It's more about why do you then reward people for referral or not? So really just having a super clear, transparent process on this is how we do things, and this is how you access the information around what we do and why we do it in that way. So that's just one part. And that is if you're just looking at the most basic, which is recruitment. Once then people are going through the recruitment process, who is a part of the recruitment process? What are the so in the process itself, so like what kind of does it have standardized questions? Does everyone go through like different types of, or does everyone go through other types of assessments? How many rounds are there within the recruitment process? What is the communication that candidates can expect? So super clear, yes, super clear communication both to your people internally, but also to a potential person applying. If a person approaches you via LinkedIn, if a person approaches you on WhatsApp, how do you manage that? And I mean, I have that on a regular basis. Just today, somebody sent me a proposal on WhatsApp because I primarily speak to him on WhatsApp. In this case, he's a student. But I eventually had to say to him, no, no, no. Here, now you are asking me for something very specific from my organization. You must send it to me via email. It cannot continue on WhatsApp. So just having very clear processes that are consistent and are consistently applied. So that's a systems point of view. The same in how you then train your people, what opportunities are given to people. So if people want to study further, as an example, if people want to have secondments, if they're in organizations that have that available, if people want to have mentors, how do they access those different types of opportunities? So making that super clear and ensuring that they know where to access that information. If people want to apply for promotions, same thing, right? And again, probably the big one, KPIs. What are people's KPIs? When are they told if they're not performing well? How is that going to be managed? Versus only being told at the end of the year in a performance evaluation that you are just meeting standards or you have not been meeting standards, and this impacts a salary increase, a bonus, etc. So just having very, very clear process and communication, like I said, around how do you manage all of that. And also, importantly, if people have grievances and issues, questions around perceptions of favoritism or bias, where do they take that information? And what is then done with that information? Also very important. So that's systems. But systems are undermined by culture. So you can have all of those beautiful things on paper, but if people don't apply it, because like we were touching on earlier, they don't trust that information or those rules are going to be applied consistently and fairly, then all of those they're just beautiful words that you've put out, saying these are values, this is what we stand for, but you don't apply them consistently, then it's that comment that we made about, culture, the comment about culture and strategy, about culture eating strategy on any given day. So that's the systems and process questions, and I think those two I said are linked. So you balance it that way. Your third question is the third question is a sad one, because in an organization where there's a serious misalignment with values, so a reward for unethical behaviors, unethical ways of being, a person in an ideal world should be able to escalate, should be able to reach out to a senior somewhere and say, there are unethical behaviors here, unfair practices happening, unfair practices that go against our standards, our processes, our values, etc. And then something real is done about or something real is done about it. But in an instance where one does not trust or doesn't feel safe to do that, and in fact doesn't trust that giving that information will make any real difference, or doesn't feel safe that it will not negatively impact them, then their alternative actually, amazement, is to leave. Because the culture of that organization is not going to change to accommodate one person who wants to be the bold voice. I actually think that in instances like that, one should then be looking at finding their way out. And I would then encourage them to, when they leave, if possible, to be honest about why they're leaving. Because what you also find is then there are pockets of other people who are like you, who are ethical, who want to see the organization be better, but assume that they are the only ones, and so nobody says anything. So I would encourage, where possible, to try to be bold and share and stand for what is right. But you also need to be practical about what happens if I get fired, or what happens if I then start being victimized. Then I need to make sure that I have an alternative, very real option for me to jump into, because in this economy, no one can afford to be unemployed. And from a recruiter point of view, it is incredibly difficult for people to get jobs. And it can be even more difficult when you are suddenly unable to have a positive reference from the place that you came from. And when you now suddenly have a gap on your CV, and you are now feeling ashamed of saying there was a misalignment in values, because you now feel as if you did something wrong. So it is a difficult one. Yes, Ajalifa, it is a difficult one to be a whistleblower, in not just in this country, yeah, but in this country, and specifically, obviously, both in public and in private organizations. So to the extent that you don't feel safe, whether there's an actual risk on your life, or safe in the sense that you don't feel safe that you won't be victimized in any way, then you should, as a matter of concern, and just pragmatically consider alternative options for yourself first, before before you start raising those alarm bells, because you don't trust that those alarms will lead to anything real. So, yeah.
As you were closing that off, with below, it hits me, that the way we are uncomfortable about it, and because of the scarcity of jobs and opportunities in the economy state, and the ruthlessness of this culture of unethical institutions, or in unethical institutions, we are here gathered as leaders, right? Right now, there's about 25 of us, assuming that is two people per each. What is a device, about 50 of us who are in attendance. And I'm thinking to myself, as leaders, what are we going to do? What kind of institutions are we going to build intentionally? Somehow the people who are here are mostly Black, if not only Black. I think it must be a call to us to say, are we going to build better companies? Are we going to build ethical institutions? Are we going to run ethical churches? Are we going to lead ethical schools? Are we going to build our own institutions that, look, if I'm going to be a leader, and I'm going to be a manager, and I'm going to be a CEO, I'm going to do things so right and so good that people feel comfortable to work therein, and to blow the whistle if need be, where corruption and unethical is an anomaly, not a norm. Because this is
Correct.
such a norm that we're afraid to attack it, because attacking it also means attacking our livelihoods.
Awesome.
And that's so unfortunate. That is so unfortunate. You can call me maybe an idealist person, but I think that as leaders, we have a role to play in sort of changing the narrative. And sometimes it doesn't start by us hoping that we're going to enter into other people's institutions and cause changes. It starts with us saying we're going to build institutions that are
Where
right.
you are at.
Yeah.
Correct.
We're going to build Black institutions which are, or which honor meritocracy, which are ethical, which are right. But look,
We're gonna honor, but also we're gonna amplify, because
yes,
they exist, and we are here, and we are
yeah,
those people.
yeah.
So amplify those voices.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look at ESCOM. At some point, we thought there's no Black leadership that can correct it. We have a Black chairman of the board, a Black CEO, and look what ESCOM has achieved, So it is possible. But hey, before we go, oh gosh, this is so good. Before we go, there's a question here, and I can't let you go without answering this question. It says that Good evening, madam. That was a wonderful presentation. We are really empowered in our leadership styles in different institutions. My question is, how can one, as a leader, promote ethical behavior without threatening or forcing employees?
Sorry, how can one promote ethical behavior without?
Without feeling like they're threatening or forcing employees.
It's in how you embody it.
Mm.
It's in how you embody it. So if you are giving people an opportunity to come to you and
Like, share, and subscribe.